Welcome back to the tutorial, everyone. This is section 2. We are going to expand on our current local data and build it out more. We've got multiple clients now, and they have a tad bit of data per client, and we have some static data just showing up that we're going to change out right now. This kind of concept, let me see, for example, I used to work for a place that was represented in multiple countries, but they used one website. And so we would use parameters in the URL to basically tell it what country we want to represent on this one page. So it was always the same website, but depending on what country was requested, that would be their data. Like I said before, like MLB and NBA and NFL, all these places have one website, and and in which case, based on which player you're going or which team you're going to, it will have the one website but with different content in it to save a wild amount of work otherwise. So as you see, I'm expanding all the content. I'm using lorem ipsum because I really don't have any content, so this is just fake text to make it look good, kind of like staging if you're going to an open house or something, basically. Sometimes I'll type something, but to just get the look and feel, we can use this lorem ipsum static text a lot. Okay, so here we're going to go ahead and see what data goes where, and we're going to call these data targets. So there are specific pieces of this JSON, and I want them to show up in specific elements of the HTML. Now here I am, get element by ID, and I'm defining those elements here and saying inner.html equals, and then I draw a path directly to the content that I wanted to do to focus on and present. Data options index of which client is literally just telling me which content out of the array of list of content I have. So here you go. Only problem is you can't see it because as the background is basically the same color as the background of the whole page, so the text is muddled out, as you can see here as we dig down. So I'm going to give it the card class, and that has default with this background. It's still a little bit not great looking, but the card class will give it the correct background. And we'll go ahead and put that into our HTML. And let's also, kind of get some heading spaces, like along with the card class in Bootstrap, we have a card heading and a card body, a whole bunch of things that have spacing that I'm going to go ahead and type. Now I'm also showing you an example of you can write HTML into your content here, or it could just be straight simple text. Now keep in mind, if you're going to be using things like Angular, or if you're going to be using React or something like that, it's not going to let you just bring in HTML. You're going to have to tell it to need to be kind of cleansed, so they'll have a plugin. But since we're just using JavaScript, you won't need that. One other thing about this is our footer is kind of muddled as well. Similar to the card, we kind of need to give it a background that fits, so you can see it just with this client, because this client has a background that's dark, the other one doesn't. So I'll just be applying this just for this one client in the CSS. And so, yeah, that looks a lot better. The spacing we'll fix here in a little while. And let's go ahead and mess around with the colors a little bit more. That's a little bit better. So, like I said, always, if you can, do it in the developer console first, and you can trial and error it. And then when you get what you like, then go to the CSS like I'm doing here. Go to the actual element in option 2, because that's the one, that client specifically. And then we'll go ahead and apply the background for the footer, from the background color. There you go. And we've already tested it because we got that directly from the console when we were working and testing. Okay, so happy here. And you notice option 1 is now the other client, and just like always, works in the mobile as well. So let's add some more pages to our content. Now, this is an interesting point. I'm going to design this. You can design it however you want. I'm designing it in pages. So page 1, page 2, page 3, and they're all assigned specific content And this is a template that's shared between all the different clients and teams in this case, and in my case, in my last job, and countries. So they would be assigned, they would all have to have the exact amount of pages, and not only that, the content elements would be identical. It would just be the content and the theme that would be different. So I guess you could write something like, if it didn't have any content for this one HTML element, then just don't represent the element in the DOM. So you could do things like that. It gets a little more tricky, but not a hard thing. This is some JavaScript saying, hey, if this is empty, then don't show it. But we won't be doing that here. We're going to be going ahead and expanding here on our pages within these paths. As you can see here, now I have to expand and tell it, this is in page 1 of the banner text, because, page 2 might have a banner as well. So we've got to distinct these two with the path. Now, I also want to remember and point out that what I did there in the banner is I did square brackets, which means obviously it's an iterable at that point. So we have to put the square brackets with a 0. So since it's, once you put those square brackets in the JSON, that means it's going to be something, it has to have iteration. So that's why it's not just a dot. Let's prepare the HTML. So we're going to use a data page data set. So data page equals 1. Let's go ahead and wrap everything that's going to be in page 1. And now I'll also make a page 2. And everything in page 2 will be represented within this div with the data page equals 2. Now we're also going to add a class called hide. Hide is something that will be default for all the pages except for the first one, because that one will be visible on the page load. But everything else will be hidden, and then with our navigation we will basically toggle the hide down to what we want to see and we want to show. This is basically a single page app. So all the HTML and all the pages live here. I mean, we're looking at, for the most part, something pretty easy. We can have half a dozen pages here, which is your typical page brochure, online brochure for any small business. And so you got about 6 pages you can do rather easily. I mean, you can do as many as you want, but it gets pretty easy. And if it's just, all on one page and you're just hiding sections, the user wouldn't know the difference. They just think it's a new page. But coincidentally, we're just hiding sections and showing others. And that's it. I'm putting some static HTML in here just for starter's sake, so that as you can see here, that is the div I've just worked on. Let's create that class of hide, and which is going to be display none. So anything that has hide class, you won't be able to see. It'll still be there though, so that means that the JavaScript will still load it into the data, and we won't have errors. It just will be invisible to the user. Let's do a little bit of spacing for the card heading, and let's get this into an actual project where we have like some new images. I got some baseball images, so we're going to be hypothetically doing 2 different baseball teams coming out of this one site. Here are the images I brought in from my own gallery. Now we'll be darkening these images to make the text legible in the banner. Remember before we were using a filter to darken that image, and what a pain in the butt it was, because everything we filtered, like all the text within that div got turned dark too, and we had to take the text out, and it was a huge disaster. So ideally you want to make your images dark so you can read them. Like, this is way too light. So what do? Let's go into something like preview, and let's just darken it. You don't even need Photoshop. I mean, Photoshop's really expensive, so if you use it all the time, fine, then it's worth buying. But since I don't buy it. I don't have the need for it that often. So I'm using preview to darken my image. Super easy filter. This is just to make my text legible in the banner. I recommend people do this. Test and check before you punt things out. Otherwise, people are like, I can't read the text. This is a really important move. And we'll refresh, and now see, you can read your text. It looks a lot better. Okay. Let's see what we're going to be doing here next. let's get rid of this static HTML. We don't need it. We're going to be plugging in the story to page 1. We're going to be putting in some dynamic content there. We're also going to be putting in dynamic images, so these static images will be gone here in a second. I'm going to add an ID, and you'll see what I mean here in a second. Here we go. So I'm going to be saving the images in the JSON data. And what I mean by this is I just need the path to the image. The image is stored in the file directory, and the styling is topic thumb. And what we need to do is get an ID that we can assign here. And so something unique. And we'll be moving it to the image. So the image now has an ID, so it makes it unique. And that means it's a content data target. So I can change out that source attribute, which is telling me what image to reference, based on what path I have in my JSON. So I name something relevant for the JSON content element that matches the HTML element. And I bring in the path, as you can see here, of what I want that source to be. And let's go ahead and name some new images for the other team. So they'll have different images. Okay, so here we're going to call out the element in HTML by ID. So get element by ID. Let's get the image tags ID. We're going to tell it we'd like to set attribute source. On load, we're going to change that source attribute to our new path that we have defined here in our JSON. So just a path to that location in the JSON object. And there we are. And obviously, depending on who's the chosen one, it will choose one of the two JSON elements in the object. Here we go. Just make sure that they're for the new one now. So these two images are not dynamic. Based on whichever team I choose, it'll have a different image. Now you'll notice I brought in, and this happens all the time, especially when you have a content management system, people don't really, they just bring in any size image. They always do this. It's just what they do. You got to be prepared for this kind of stuff. It's a lot of CSS, kind of like the image cover is a good one. Max width 100% and height auto is another, good thing to keep things in the correct perspective. Or if the image is just too darn big, and you have to keep your cards kind of consistently height to width, otherwise it looks kind of out of balance. What I recommend, if you're just worried about somebody bringing an image that's just too darn big, and this card expands it so it looks kind of silly, and you'll see what I mean here in a minute. What I would do is you can also do like an overflow, and if it's an overflow, you just do hidden. So instead of expanding the height of that card to make it unbalanced, we just kind of let it fall under. So here, as you can see, it folds under. And now the cards are the same height. You can also do it with JavaScript. You can say, what's the highest height of each card? Then you find the highest height, and then you apply that height to all the cards. Unfortunately, you have to load the JavaScript first to do it. So it'll be kind of a flashy thing to the user. It'll be the height will be off, and then JavaScript will kick in, and all of a sudden the two cards will be the same height all of a sudden. This will catch it before that. It's just a matter of you will be cutting off your images. And see, I put in the number's too big here. You'll be cutting off your images otherwise. So this is what I recommend if in case you're afraid of people coming in and just putting huge images. You can you'll avoid massive problems of things like that. And here we got some padding issues that came in from when I copied and pasted from Bootstrap. I don't need all that padding, so I'm just getting rid of it. Okay, so I'm just going to do that by taking out the class. All right, so let's get into content. That one looks good. Now, we also can notice that everything's running off the page because we have the overflow Y hidden. And that includes not only the images, but the text is being flown off. So always double check to see if your text fits, if you're going to be doing that overflow hidden thing. Now, in this case, I don't need to write the word strangers, so it just works. But like I said, if you are going to be doing things overflow, that is going to be a problem. So be careful of how far your text goes. Now, we'll be changing some of that. We'll be helping ourselves out later for that. Let's work on these navigations. It doesn't work. Not even the mobile menu even shows. So let's get in here and make that work. I deleted all the JavaScript that comes with Bootstrap. I don't want it. It's too big and I don't need it. I just need one function to make that mobile menu pop up and down, and these navigation things are going to take one function and they're going to share the same function. So I just want a contact link and then my story link. And then we've got our home link already ready to go. Let's go ahead and come up with a function. It's funny, you can do a couple things with links. Now, as you can see here, I'm making up a href and saying JavaScript, here's my function, and I want to pass this string along. This it will work. I'm going to change it because it's going to be better because everything's named in numbers, and so I don't need the word page, just 2. And not only that, I want to show you kind of another option. You can use the href, but don't have the single quotes because it'll mess you up in certain areas. So you'll see what I'm saying. This is going to be the toggle for the mobile menu. I'm just going to pass the string toggle to the function that I haven't created yet. And let's create that function. Start navigation. So I want to go ahead and keep this outside the scope of the function in case I need to let anywhere in the program know, is the nav bar showing or not. And it's nothing off. It's no skin off my my back here at all to just go ahead and do that because it may come in handy later. It's a good habit to get in to keep these variables around and open. And let's go ahead and start saying, what am I toggling? If toggle equals that string named toggle, and that means mobile equals false, and we need to make mobile equal true. So we've changed that mobile nav. And the only difference really between this toggle thing is the class show. So we need to identify it and say, do we want to show the menu in the mobile, and say just add class show and mobile equals true. Now we'll show you here in a second. There is a syntax error, but as you can see, what I'm doing is we're just toggling. If it's not open, then open it. If it's open, then close it, is all we're doing with that. Got it opening thus far. So let's swing in and do some fixes with our syntax. See if you can point them out. Initially, I went for the route of, it's contradicting itself, which is a good close guess is what my syntax error is, but it's not the problem is. Okay, so it does work. It says show, but the show's not going away. Why? Now let's take a closer look. Now we can call it by ID if we want to. That could be it. What do you think it is? See, it opens, but it will not close. What did I do wrong? Ready? When I'm changing the mobile nav to something, saying if mobile nav equals false, I do not assign mobile nav equals true with a triple quote. Now, return false won't hurt anything. That'll just keep us from memory leaks. So that's fine. Now we're just expanding this condition, and there we go. 1 equal sign equals false. That assigns the value, not triple. Now it toggles. So now the mobile nav will toggle or open or close based on which one it currently is. What we also need to do is we get to show the page that we asked to visualize. So remember, this is a single page app. Everything's hidden until you ask it not to be, based on the navigation. So what I do is I find out what page the user wants. Now we already know that what toggle does, and then we stop it from there. If it doesn't say toggle, we're moving on. And we're telling everything to hide. You see how for each call, everything, query selector all data pages, all data, the data set that has data page, all those are going to be hidden. Now we go back to the data page that we asked to toggle mobile nav with toggle what. Now that one we will remove the hide class and it will show. So we hide them all, and then the one that got selected we will add the class show. Very simple. Hide them all and then just show the one you requested. You can't miss with that. Now we're also going to stop with the return false. We don't have any memory leaks. Just, you can always do that. If you don't think that, for some reason you think that this function is going to keep running because it didn't return anything, you can always hit return false. Now keep in mind we also have our nav links up above, and there's a certain active look. It'll be more highlighted if it's the active page. So every time you click something, you want that link to be highlighted. So what we're going to do is the exact same concept as what we were doing when we were hiding and showing our pages. We're going to do another for each call. We go through every one of the elements, the link it's a link nav in the nav, and we tell it take all the active classes out, so none of them are active. Similar to our last one where we hide all the pages, and then we say, okay, which one was selected now that we've hidden them all, or we've taken all the active classes out, and then we find out, and then we just add active to that one. Now these have to be identifiable, so let's take out some of the crap that Bootstrap had, and let's put in our own data set to identify our links. Now notice that data link 1 and 2, these all coincide with our data pages. So when data link 2 story is clicked, it will be highlighted, and it will also be 2 will represent the page that's being displayed in the DOM, because we took the hide class out. And we'll come back to the contact page here in a minute. We haven't written anything. But as you can see, I'm going to go through all the data links. And the one that I selected will be the only one that has the active class. All the other ones were removed. There you go, add class active. So let's go see if it worked. Okay, you see how they're toggling from one active, one's not, based on the page we're going to? That's exactly what we want. So let's write the contact form. It's the standard HTML here. Not doing any Ajax or anything. What we are going to be doing is a post from this form just to show you how to do it. It's not going to go anywhere, but I do want to show you the very useful functionality of your traditional HTML form. It's going, when you hit the post, all the input fields have a name, and that name will be gathered up by the HTML, and the value of the field, the name of that field will basically be pushed. So whatever the name is will be equal, and then the value, and it works perfectly. So when you're writing in your input tags and you type in your text input field, you write a class for Bootstrap. Form control just means it's going to go all the way across in this form. And name is key. And so here we're going to have first name. This is identifiable. Everything in HTML is going to be going by this name. So make sure it's unique, kind of similar to an ID. So let's change this one to last name for the next one. And of course the placeholder will change as well. This one will be email. And then, of course, your typical form, email form has a text area. We also want it to have the form control class, so it'll stretch all the way across. I tend to write the row of 5 or 4 to kind of give it some depth so they can write a paragraph, and a little placeholder there for them. Okay, let's wrap this in a form tag. And then I'm going to create action, which is typically what I would write here would be method equals post, and action is a link to like a PHP file or something, or whatever code you're writing, and it'll send all the data from the keys and values, the keys being the names from these fields, and the values being what the fields can pertain, what the users put in, to wherever you're going. So when we click the submit button, it will actually gather that up and fire it off correctly in the correct protocol. So here's our contact link now up and running, as you can see, and we'll get back to this shortly because I still got to work on the button. Let's go ahead and do a little bit more of expanding on our JSON here. Now within that contact form, I need to get a title. It's kind of, to me, it looks a little non-personal. So a lot of times when you're writing a contact form, like, all right, contact form, who exactly am I contacting here? And then let's also remember that we need to write in that action attribute within the form tag. Now that action is going to have an endpoint where our server-side function resides. And this is content that will change based on everything else. So if we have a client 1 and client 2, not only remember we're changing out images and themes and content, we're also changing out where that action address is. So this form will literally be firing off to a completely different server, or wherever you want. It doesn't have to even be the same server. It could be somewhere completely different, to a different action, completely different function. Who knows? But that's the beauty of being able to swap this out within your dynamic content. Is you're still hosting one site, but you can do wild amounts of different functionality based on that action. And let's go ahead and do the JavaScript so we assign the JSON content to the DOM elements on the contact form. So I'm going to call out my contact form action. I'm going to say, okay, that attribute action, I would like it to have this data from the JSON object. So it's from page 3, and it's called contact action. And so each one of those is different for each character. Now we also want to do the same thing for the title. So contact the title, we'll just go ahead and put the team's title for their contact page there. And it'll work dynamically, just like I said. Here we are. Let's go to the contact page. And obviously it's muddled because of the text. So let's go ahead and do a little CSS to clean that text up and make it so it's legible. Now, what we did in the banner was working great. So let's see if we can tie that together down here in our CSS. Okay, so that we already have the color correct. Let's get all the headings for this, for option 2, to have that color as well. Now it should be fine. There, we're good. And let's go here, the other contact, that's looking good. All right. And then as you can see, when I change my endpoint changes for the action of this contact form every time I change the the parameters in the URL. So let's start up with the other page. We'll get back to the contact page in a minute. Let's fill in some more of the content for the second page. Let's get lorem ipsum in here. I just want to get some text I can use to make it look nice. Just all I need is a little bit of random text. Now I'm going to show you something interesting. Earlier we did a teaser, and it was of a story that's going to be on the second page and so on and so forth. Watch what I do. These stories are rather long now, as you can see, and what I'm going to change out is those teasers are just going to have the first so many characters of the story. So it's kind of like literally a teaser. So it'll be a substring of that value. So we'll take out what we have, and within the dynamic content that I already laid down for the teaser, I'm going to put a data target, and we'll put in the substring of that story. Pretty neat stuff. So what I'm going to do is bring this story down, and obviously we need it in the second clients as well. It needs to match. We'll get some different content for the second client, and then just paste this out. I'm just putting in straight simple text right now, no HTML. And we'll change out this content too. So it's unique content to this client. Okay. So the teaser. We want to have the teaser show that, like, a little bit of that content. The problem is that content is actually above where the teaser is. So watch this. I'm going to empty out this paragraph tag. I'm going to make an ID for this paragraph tag that says, I want my story teaser to go here. Story teaser 1. So when this gets written, it's telling me when the teaser comes along, I need you. This is the target. The problem is the story data is above this in the JSON. So let's assign a target in the HTML. And remember, this is dynamic HTML. It does not exist there yet, so it will not work. We have not written it yet. Okay, so we got to tie these elements we got to identify them in JavaScript, and then we got to let it know. When I write that teaser, I want it to show the story of story 1. But I only want to show the first 75 characters. It's a teaser. Because when they go to the next page where the story is, I want the full story to be there. So the teaser truly is a traditional, just a hint of what you're going to see. So right now I've got it written as a substring of the first 25 characters, and then it's got 3 dots, just like any teaser would have on the first page. Now, keep in mind, it's not going to work. We're going to have an error. And said, what are you talking about? What target? What is teaser 1 and what is this data? That doesn't jive. So we're going to have to take that, cut it, and put it below. So that target that we defined will be written first, and then we're going to have content applied to it later once it's been written. So you see here, all this stuff is going to need to move. Let's get it down so now that it loads on the proper time. So write the target first, then target your data. Otherwise it won't work. So we've got our teaser running on the first page, and it's the same data as the second page, but it's no teaser, it's the full content. And let's go ahead and get the full content target on the second page right here. So this is the target. And we're going to only have we're going to do column 6, so there are going to be 2 columns here. There'll be the story content will be on the left, and then we're going to do a video on the next. So in the second column next to it, I'm going to put in, so column MD6 that means it's 2, and here is the embedded, typical YouTube iframe embed tag that you can just copy from YouTube. I'm taking out the height and width and bringing in my own class called YouTube panel. Let's go make some stylings for the YouTube panel here. What's important about this YouTube panel is it's living in a column that is half the width of the container. So we want to make sure that it is sized correctly, and especially for mobile and things like that. So we're going to be changing out that source to what we've assigned it here. So the YouTube key is just YouTube, and the value is going to be the ID of the movie we want to use. So on page 2, let's move this down, and we want our other client to have a page 2 as well, with a different movie. And we'll also want to bring in a banner for this page 2 as well. So bear with me while I get a banner prepared. And now on the second client, we're going to give them something, but we'll give them a new ID and a new banner. So when they go to page 2, they will also have YouTube and banner, but they'll be different, along with a different content. There we go, different ID for the YouTube. And let's pick another picture for our second client. I'll copy that and bring this new value in for their image banner. Now let's also do the sizing for the YouTube panel. So it says here the ID YouTube panel, width is 100%, and we'll go height auto. This is the same thing that keeps things in correct perspective. So when something gets shorter or bigger, you have to keep the height and width matching, otherwise it'll get stretched. This is how you do that. Width 100%, height auto. Let's go ahead and use JavaScript to point out the DOM elements that we'd like to target our data to. So we've said get an element by ID. And we said, okay, that YouTube panel, that source of the YouTube panel, set attribute source. And we want it to set this to our new YouTube ID. So here's the path to the YouTube embed player. Let's go ahead, and there's the path here to the ID we would like to use. So we go page 2, and the first YouTube iteration is the one we'd like to play here. Now let's go ahead and remember, this is the same content on the second page that we used for the teaser. Except for the teaser, we only used the first 75 characters. So now I'm just going to use the full body here as the story. So it truly is teasing what the second page is going to have. So now that we've got the YouTube panel has a correct ID, I had wrote class by accident. So now that you can see that it works. So here, let's go ahead and do a minimum height of 350, which will go on mobile too. Let's go to our second page. There we go. So now we've got, based on our client, we have this video showing. And let's go back to see what the other client's video is. Oh, too many characters for this string. Too many. It was pushing the control, or it was pushing the text down too far. Okay, here's another thing we can do. We want to add the continue reading. That needs to have a link to the same page. As it says continue reading, it's a teaser. So we're going to need to write that in. Now, if I would have just taken it would just, instead of a string saying to, if it was a number with no quotes, I could have gotten away with that. But instead, I didn't, and now I'm still doing the href with a hashtag, and I'm writing on click into this tag instead. Don't do this. Use the href with the hashtag. The problem is I was using it was a string, just use it as a number. It would have worked. That'll be fine too. This will work fine. So on click, toggle mobile nav, and it says to go to page 2. Just like up on the top in the nav bar. So now when you click continue reading, you're on to the next page. And here's the other video for the other client. There you go. There's their video. And there, yep, same one. Okay. Let's get a little styling in here. This thing doesn't look so good. Another thing is, now that we've styled it, I put a card around the JSON, around that YouTube. So it's a little shit. It's got some more size. It just looks better. Now I'm typing in contact information. I want to point this out. Contact information is going to be repeated in multiple places. I'm repeating it in 2 spots, but it could show up in the footer. It could show up in any banner, wherever you want it. So you don't just do a simple apply because there's multiple. And in JavaScript, it needs to go through a for loop to find out, let's cover where every address is, where every email is, and where every phone is, and fill it out with this data. That's what we're going to need to do. It's not as easy as just a one-off. You have to go through a loop since there's more than one. But that's fun. It's super easy to do. So, I'm going to add a banner to these second pages now, so that it makes them a little more flashy. I'll name the ID story banner. So it'll be a unique to it. I'm also going to put in a title, and this is also, I'll put in the contact information here in the banner. So you'll see what I mean. Now, since we brought this in from an old version, we don't need to keep this HTML out. We can put it inside the story banner because we didn't filter it this time. So let's go ahead and get this written out properly. And this is where our data target is for our phone, for our email, and our address. We'll go ahead and change the numbers to make it unique to the client and their email address as well. And 1060 West Addison, that's Wrigley Field, and 401 East Jefferson Street's where the Diamondbacks play in Arizona. I'm just making different addresses for each different team. Okay, so on the contact, when this thing loads, I'm going to go through and call out every place where phone is. Now keep in mind this is incorrect. I wrote query selector. It needs to be query selector all, but I'll come back and fix it in a second. So everywhere where I have phone, I'm saying you need to show, and here's the path to the phone data. And I just make a copy because I know this one's next going to be email. The next one's going to be address. And then I'll realize the syntax is wrong here in a second. So I almost got these data targets written correctly. I'm going to make a copy of this because I also want to represent this on my contact page. So on the contact page, below the contact title, the H2 here, I'm just going to paste the exact same HTML with the exact same classes. We need to write query selector all for each one of these, otherwise it will not work. All right, let's show the same data in multiple places. See here, now it's on my contact, and now it's in my banner. Banner, you can't read it, unfortunately, so let's get a background image so that looks nice. Okay, so the banner for the background. Story 1 banner. That's the identifying element in the JSON object and in the HTML DOM. So we're going to assign a style background image, and you need to do the syntax correctly. Don't just write the image path. It needs to be written the same way that the CSS is written. So it will need to be, we'll have a string that says URL, and then we go into parentheses and bring our string in, or value of where this thing's located. So let's get some of our images in here, make this thing look a little more professional. You see how it's kind of muddled, and our banners are working, but everything's kind of muddled and you can't see stuff. So let's shape and size, and let's get this thing looking professional. I'm just going to go back in and find images that I've taken, and I'm going to be cropping them with my preview app that's free with my computer. So I'll just open something up. So this will make a good banner. I just want this one part of the image, because otherwise these are rather large images. We don't need all this. We just want the part that looks nice for the banner. So there it is, and I'm going to you can't read any of the text, so let's bring it down like we did a little bit earlier. So it's still a nice picture, it's just it's got to make it legible for text to be on top of it. So I'm darkening it. I say we save it to the exact same name it was, so we don't have two of them, and I can just hit refresh, and it'll refresh into the new image. There we go. Name it correctly with the extensions correct. Story 1 banner. We want the color in that banner to be white. There you see how you can read it now? It looks a lot better. Cool. Let's get another one out. Here's for a new banner. We got it for the other team. I'm just going to select the part that I want for the banner. Once again, I'm going to tone it down so it'll be legible when I put text on top of it. And we're going to use the same name we had. I guess it'll be fine. We'll put version 2 here. Cool. And I'll go ahead and swap this value out with the new image I like. Alright, there's the second page. And I also want to put a title in this banner, just because it's kind of random with just the address and the phone and the email. So let's go ahead and put a title. It'll be whatever this story is pertaining to. We'll have that title here in the banner. We will dominate. Sure, that's what this team says in the banner. And it looks like we need to make the JavaScript target. So I'm going to call out where this element's going to live in the DOM. And here's the HTML element. I'm going to go assign the ID tag to it so that the JavaScript will know where to target that data. There we go, page title. Page 2 title. Inner HTML means we will be putting this content in that data target. There we go. Looking a lot better. Let's go ahead and do a little more of our coloring of the fonts so that they will fit what we're dealing with here. I saw that I was still muddling up some of my text, so within my option 2, I'd like to get that text to be the same color as all the other highlighted or headings that are in my banner. So I'm just going to bring it down here, and this will be fine. For now. We can always detail this later, but let's give it a go. There you go. Now very legible. Now let's fix this button. I will show you how this thing's going to post with just traditional functionality. Here's our form. We need to write the word submit. Now Bootstrap 5 does not have a BTN block anymore. This is how you make the button go all the way across. It's the dgrip gap-2. Now the button will go all the way across. And as long as you have a type submit, it's going to run the functionality correct for the form tag. Watch this. When I hit the submit button, all the I'm going to put all the values in here. I'm going to do a little bit of spacing, actually. The form and the footer are way too close. Let's get them separated. Let's get back to the content page. There we go. A little spacing, content. Okay, that looks better. Let's fill in the fields. Look, some endpoint.php, and then we have all of our variables and their keys and values basically in there. That's where it's going. Now you would put method equals post in the form tag. And so for the most part, what I'm doing is I'm building a site. You've got dynamic content, videos, images, and dynamic endpoints for their actions and their fields. And as you see, when I hit submit, it's taking those keys and values from the fields and sending them wherever my endpoint is. And then those, like I said, will be different endpoints based on the different clients. And here it is in mobile. Looks like everything's working good. This is kind of the sizing for some of our mobile images. We have a flower image still from our old version because we have to update our mobile version. See, it's baseball and desktop, but it's flowers in mobile. There's flowers. That's funny. Okay, so let's copy that image and swing in here and replace it. So now it'll be the same image in mobile as it was in desktop. Refresh. There we go. It's a little too dark, so I would play with that a little bit more, but you see what I'm saying. So now we got all of these things running, multiple clients, one page.